Hello, hi.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Rodney, good evening.
Wayne,
You
Andrew.
can hear loud and clear? Can you hear me loud and clear?
Hello, hi. Hi, good evening.
I
Hi, Rodney, good evening.
can hear you.
You can hear loud and clear? Okay, you're gonna put your phone on silent, so because there's a delay, like a 20-second delay.
My phone. I don't think my phone is on.
No, sorry, that was me. We're good.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get started. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on tonight's Kopi Time. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Mr. Rodney Koh. He's a lawyer, a practicing lawyer, but he's also got a background in investment banking and finance as well. So it makes him a very, very unique skill and very special guest today to be speaking to us regarding the topic today, right? So today's topic, I think it sort of popped up in the news, but then it was quite quiet earlier this year. Tonight we're going to be discussing it. So if you're a business owner or if you're a startup or you're an investor you might want to fund certain startups that might be raising capital through crypto, yes, it is legal now in Malaysia, and here we have Rodney to speak to us about it. Okay, before I get started, let me just quickly share my screen. Let's see, right? Okay, just a very quick disclaimer. This session is purely educational, right? So we will be talking about cryptos and things like that. So, please advise, or whatever we talk about today is not meant to be financial advice, purely educational purposes. Okay, so just want to do a quick update. I see some of you guys are slowly strolling in, so I'm just gonna do a few things just to update you guys on. Those of you who just joined us for first time today, you actually get free access to Equities Tracker for 2 weeks. It's absolutely free for you. All you need to do is send us a WhatsApp at 603-8408-207, right? So if you want to be a data-driven investor with stocks, right? Create that free account just by sending us a WhatsApp. Click on number 1 English freebies, and you'll automatically create an account for you, right? Alternatively, if you don't prefer WhatsApp, you can go to our website equitiestracker.com/free, fill in your details, and you can get access to Equities Tracker absolutely for free for new subscribers, right? As you all know, we are on every single night at 8 p.m. We started on March the 19th. MCO started on 18th, so we made a promise that we'll be here every single night, and we'll be bringing interesting speakers or interesting topics to make you a more informed investor, right? So whatever we talk about is to help you become a more informed investor. And tonight, obviously, we have Rodney Koh. Now, for those of you who haven't done yet, because we are on every night, how do you get a notification? If you're accessing us from Facebook or YouTube, just make sure you like or subscribe and follow as well. So if you're on Equities Tracker here, this is the Facebook. You have to like and also follow and make sure that your notifications are switched on, right? So that when every time we go live or we have any sessions, you get notified as well. For YouTube, it's the same. If you go to youtube.com/equities tracker, you're going to find our YouTube channel. Just click to subscribe, or you do a search Equities Tracker, click to subscribe. All our archive or our vault of interviews with CEOs or very important people are actually all there. It's absolutely free for you to learn. Just click on subscribe, because you will also get notified whenever we go live, right? So tonight we have almost 70-30 of you guys on our Facebook and also on our YouTube channel. Okay, if you don't know about this, we are running a charity awareness. Okay, we're saying that those that have been on MCO for last 6 weeks, especially the daily wage earners, they are the most affected. So I'm appealing to all you investors here who have, at least food in your stomach and some money to invest. Hopefully, you also have some money for charity as well. We want to highlight this, and we started this on April the 6th, so we're now coming to about a month plus. So far, we've actually raised 144,000. How we're doing this charity is very simple. What we get you to do is donate to your own charity or donate to your favorite charity. If you don't have a charity to donate to, we have some suggestions on our website. All you need to do is go to charity.equitiestracker.com. Now, in exchange for 100 ringgit donation, please don't send us money. All you need to do is just send us the receipt. For that donation, all we want, what we're going to offer you is actually free e-learning courses, all right? Absolutely free from myself and also Benny on value investing and also chart analysis. You get that absolutely free. As long as you make a donation, we will invite you to our Facebook group. Yeah, and every week myself and Benny will be on there to help answer any questions, so you get to learn about value investing or anything about stocks, especially if you're a beginner. And for that 100 ringgit, you get to also bring along 3 friends for free, right? So you can learn together. So you know, it doesn't get much better than that in terms of value, right? So if you have friends who want to support this course, please share with your friends as well. Okay, so tonight's session, I'm just gonna I know Rodney is gonna have some slides there, but let me just very quickly talk about Rodney's background. He's actually a returning expat, right? Correct? You're a returning expat many years ago, right?
Yes, a returning expat many years ago.
So you were in Australia before as a lawyer,
yes.
And you've come back, and you've now you were an investment banker for many years, right? And now his firm is called ALSS, okay, and he's now he now specializes in mergers, acquisitions, IPOs, ICOs, due diligence, and so on and so forth, right? Just disclaimer also, Rodney is also we also engaged Rodney. How I got to know Rodney was through a friend who introduced me to him, and we also engaged him for his services, right? And I think he's one of the very few legal people we know that when we talk about crypto, his eyes light up, you know, his lights light up. And you know, normally when we talk to people about crypto, they're like, oh, no, it's a scam, you know. And this was many years ago, right? A couple of years back. So he's definitely one of the more forward thinkers in this space, in the Malaysian space, and we're very lucky to have him tonight, right? So tonight's topic, for those viewers who are not familiar with the world of crypto, things have changed quite dramatically in the last 3 years, from it being completely banned till now we have 3 crypto exchanges legal in Malaysia. This year, they've issued some guidelines. So one of the very early days about crypto, which was very disruptive to fundraising, was that just like stocks, we have IPO, right? In the initial public offering, right? I think at the peak, you know, end of December 2017, at the peak, right? A lot of these crypto guys were issuing coins or tokens in exchange for money, right? And the very early term they called it was an ICO. So it sounds almost like an IPO, right? So the thing they have in common is initial and offering, okay? Everything else was completely unheard of. And if you were unlucky enough to invest in some of those that actually close shop after that, of course, we realized there is a need for regulation to stick in, right? But of course, it's a very disruptive way of how traditional markets are being disrupted by crypto, right? So now they have a newer term, they call it initial exchange offering, right? Or IEOs as well. So I mean, it almost sounds like an IPO. And here tonight, we want to have a chat with Rodney. Again, if you're a startup or you're thinking investing in startups, or if you are looking at maybe if your own company is looking to raise funds, what are the guidelines right now if you issue crypto instead of traditional stocks, right? So I hope it was a good enough introduction, Rodney, just to kickstart. Let me know if I missed anything.
Well, I couldn't have done a better job. All right, it was an excellent primer to what is what we are going to spend a bit of time discussing. Okay, all right. Shall I proceed?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you to the Brothers Wong for having me on tonight. Most of my clients wouldn't interview me, but you are my first clients in my 30 years who have chosen to interview their lawyer, which is highly unusual and very welcome. It really is. Thank you very much. Okay. As Alvin had succinctly put it, in years past, because of the advent of blockchain technology, ever since Ethereum was actually formulated in 2014 by Vitalik Buterin, there has been this concept called ICO, an initial coin offering. Okay, it sounds similar to an IPO. It's where a company wants to raise funds, but instead of selling stocks, they sell what is called a digital token. And that digital token sits on what we know as the blockchain. Now, the blockchain is what they call a distributed ledger in itself. It's actually, it's like a chain of computers or a chain of computers with information that's replicated across that chain of computers itself. And because information is replicated across and in an encoded and in an immutable form, that means a form that cannot be changed, information there is recorded and it's permanent, right? So if I were to send something, if I have a transaction with Alvin or Andrew itself on the blockchain, that will be recorded on the blockchain and it is permanent, okay? What the genius behind this entire blockchain technology is that if you recall in a normal computer, if I were to send somebody a file, a data file itself, that file, what I send, will be a copy of the file I have. All right. Now that you can't do that. If you want to exchange shares or you want to change money like Bitcoin, some form of cryptocurrency, that file has to move from my computer or my wallet to yours, and it has to be permanent. And that's what blockchain technology was able to do. Right. So at this point, I'd like to share some slides. If you don't mind, can I do so? Share screen, and then share screen, which screen application window. Hang on, let me check which one it is. I can't seem to find my application window.
So if you click on the share screen, so wait, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing mine. Yep.
Oh, you're still sharing yours, is it? Okay, let me try.
Yeah. So if it's a PowerPoint slide, right?
Yep.
So it's a PowerPoint slide. Oh, got it. Okay, cool. Cool.
Okay, let me do this. So so what was happening at that time was that you had a lot of ICOs that came up because people were trying to attract capital and money through these ICOs. But the problem is they weren't selling shares. They were selling what was called a token, okay? All right? So why did it take off in itself? Why was it so popular? Number one, you didn't need any approval from any authorities because of a loophole in all our securities laws. Even our capital market laws itself had a loophole because digital tokens and digital currencies, there were no laws governing it. So everybody said, because there's no laws governing it, it is not a security, they can do whatever they wanted to do. So ICOs took off, okay? In fact, all enterprises, startups with no records were actually doing ICOs. They were accessible by investors worldwide. And the thing that attracted people was that the tokens that were issued, okay, were listable on exchanges. Not the normal exchanges, not the regulated exchanges, but on digital exchanges, token exchanges all over the world. For instance, on Binance and other places like that. You didn't have any listing requirements to comply with. You had no fixed disclosure requirements. And yet, people were pouring money into this particular market. the ICOs. All right, and why ICOs could get around the securities laws was that because it was not a security, it wasn't covered by security, and because cryptocurrency was not a fiat currency recognized by laws at that time, okay, it also escaped Bank Negara scrutiny. So Securities Commission had no power over the securities itself because it's not defined as security. Bank Negara had no power over the payments in cryptocurrency because it was not recognized as a currency. So with that, ICOs boomed all over the world. It's a similar story elsewhere as it was here in itself. But then, and this is just a short diagram actually, how they actually created ICOs. They would actually start up a foundation. These foundations release tokens to the market. The investment public will buy these tokens, okay? And these tokens were given to a company to run its business. And then the tokens are then also given up to cryptocurrencies, exchanges, and digital exchanges itself would actually list them, and the tokens would go up or down. The problem is the entire process of the tokens itself, the value of the product was purely speculative because the tokens were not shares. You had no income right, although some tried to put some income right to it, and you basically own no shares or equity in the business itself. So the tokens was essentially valued by association with the companies.
So it's like a prepaid, almost like a prepaid, like a what do I call it? Maybe a coupon or maybe a voucher. It's almost like a prepaid voucher, right?
The only time the ICOs, the tokens had a value, that if it was some form of a voucher system like you mentioned there, it's where you can actually use those tokens to exchange for goods and services on the platform that issued the tokens itself. Okay, so that was really the only value that you had. Sometimes some of the values were they tried to impose values by giving what you call dividends. They used the term airdrops, you know, which were essentially some form of return on that by giving more tokens to the holders itself. But all these things eventually came to a halt because the regulators worldwide put a stop to them. In Malaysia and elsewhere, all these things have been put ground to a halt. Okay, right. So essentially, almost 97 to 98% of ICOs fails. Many of them were scams, and the ICOs left token holders with no rights. And what's more, the entire cost of actually getting an ICO done, the listing cost, shall we say, was very, very expensive and sometimes exceeded that of an IPO. So it had a very short, it was like a shooting star. It went up very high, very fast, and also came down very, very quickly.
So some people got very rich, a lot of people got poor, right?
Yes. You know, some people who were fortunate enough to cash out before the thing crashed were very rich. Unfortunately, there were very few of them around. Okay, there are very few. The general investors.
Either you were lucky enough to invest in an ICO or unlucky enough, right? So it's two ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I'm neither. So okay, so I just advised on the law and looking at the matter. Okay, so and the SC, to be fair to our Securities Commission, were advising people every time, although they didn't have laws governing it, they were advising people to be very careful and to actually be wary of any ICO offers. There were many ICO offers that were made, even in Malaysia itself at that time. Some even football players even wanted to issue coins and tokens against their own name or against their own person. The ideas behind what could be tokenized and sold out had become a downside ridiculous in a very short while. Well, what to do when you have free for all and no regulations? That's the problem. So when our former finance minister then decided that it was time to put a stop to it, so on the 8th of January, he signed an order which banned trading of cryptocurrencies, okay, or any ICOs, cryptocurrencies and tokens, okay. So both cryptocurrencies and tokens came under the jurisdiction of SC, all right. And Bank Negara continued to have jurisdictions over currencies, fiat currencies. So SC took over the governance of this, okay? And on the 31st of January, the SC began to roll out a series of reforms to this area of finance, okay? So they amended the guidelines to allow the establishment of digital asset exchanges, okay? Up until that point, up until the 15th of January, there was something like almost, I think 52 exchanges operating in Malaysia itself. But by one foul swoop of legislation, that all came to an end, and those were then encouraged to apply under the new rules which had come out in 2019 last year. Okay, so three of them had approval: Luno, Synergy, and Tokenize. And I believe you had not long ago had I think the CEO of Tokenize on one of these 𝑘𝐸𝑡𝒚 sessions itself. All three of them are now operational. Okay, so these exchanges are up and running. Synergy being I think the last of them to go up and running. They became operational during the MCO. So good on them. All right, but they need something to list. Okay, although they are doing, they are trading itself. They need tokens or in effect stocks to list to be viable, and that was answered essentially early this year. On the 15th of January, the SC issued guidelines to allow for the creation of digital assets. Okay, so it's, in other words, it is the regulatory approach to ICOs, making them legit, putting them under a legislative regime. Okay, and as you mentioned earlier, there was some interest early this year, and then unfortunately, this stupid fellow called COVID-19 came and upset all our lives upside, and has put things back. So we will have to deal with the fellow later. All right, but essentially what happens is that the guidelines deal with three parties: the issuer, the operator, and the investor itself. Okay, and the interesting thing, as Alvin was mentioning, it is what is now potentially open to digital issuers itself that is actually quite exciting. All right. Okay. So now, if you are an SME or startup or company, all right, you can actually seek a listing of tokens, okay, and to carry out what is called an IEO, which is an initial exchange offering. You are allowed to raise up to 20 times the capital that you have. Your minimum paid up capital must be at least $500,000 ringgit. And if you structure it correctly, it doesn't even affect your capital structure at all. That means you're not issuing shares. You're issuing a class of investments called tokens, okay? And the investors' rights should be defined separately from those of the shareholders' rights. You can actually raise up to 100 million on an IEO, okay? So that is the upper limit. The minimum limit, basically based on 20 times of $500,000 would be about 10 million. That's your minimum. Your maximum is 100 million. So it's actually quite a sizable chunk that you can actually raise. All right. The number one advantage of these new guidelines is that tokens that you create can represent a fractional interest in the underlying business, like a share. It can also give a rate of return. Okay. It can be a debt or equity instrument, and subject to one condition that SC imposes, where the token is a kind of security that already is a recognized class. You have to follow the rules dealing with the recognized class. If it's a unit trust, if it's bond or warrant or option, you just have to follow the rules. This is a lot better than the ICOs because the tokens now can have value, inherent value, rather than just value by association. So this is a huge advantage that the rules now offer. This is my opinion on what the rules offer. I need to put a disclaimer. This is my opinion, reading the guidelines, because the guidelines doesn't stop anybody from doing this, and also actually implicitly allows different kinds of tokens. These are in fact called security tokens. Right? This is what this essentially our rules now allow for a security token offering like this. Okay. The only restriction is that SC says that it must be done by a Malaysian company, which is run in Malaysia, and it must also demonstrate that the operator, the digital tokens underlying business or project provides an innovative solution or meaningful digital value proposition. Okay, I was at the SC and I asked them what that meant. They were very open to what that meant. They say the example is if it provides a solution or addresses an existing market need or improves an existing process. Okay, so we said that. We asked for further examples. The SC was not keen to give any further examples other than put your proposal together, give it to us, we'll have a look. If we see it, if it's good, you get it. All right. So this is the way they are trying to shape the kind of issues that will come on to the digital asset exchanges, which we have three of right now. This is the so-called policy direction.
So, Rodney, just a question. So, does that mean that if let's say a company gets all their rules together and they say they want to raise X, Y, Z, SC still has final say whether that's possible? Is that right?
Absolutely right. Every submission needs to be approved by SC. Okay. Essentially, what happens is it's like an IPO in a way. The IEO operator acts like the merchant banker. Okay, all right. He's the merchant bank. They will they in fact do all the evaluation. They will even supervise the writing of the white paper. There is still a white paper to be issued. The white paper disclosure requirements are in the rules. It's not as strict as the IPO sort of disclosure requirement, but the general themes and the general disclosures are there. Okay, so you need to comply with it. And the IEO operator acts like a sponsor. It submits to SC and says, we think this guy should be allowed to list. And the SC will then ask the operator why, So just like the merchant banker, and you will need to be able to argue your case and present it to SC in a way that convinces them to approve the particular listing itself. So you are quite right. It is up to SC. SC still has the power of life and death over any IEO. Okay. So essentially, what we see right now in this particular diagram is this is my opinion. This is my opinion how it actually should be structured. What an IEO should be is that the investment public will actually sign a trust deed. Okay, the IEO operator will act as trustee, and right now the SC is hinting that they expect the IEOs to be paid in cash, not crypto. Okay, although there is no prohibition against crypto, the expectation is that it's still going to be paid for in cash. So the IEO operator has to open trust accounts to collect this money itself. All right.
Rodney, what do you mean by, maybe for the viewers, what do you mean by an IEO operator versus so we have DEX there, which stands for Digital Asset Exchange, right? Which we have three, and you mentioned Synergy, Luno, and
Tokenize.
Tokenize, right?
Tokenize, yeah.
So what's the difference between? Is this the same? Are they same parties? Is the IEO operator the same party?
Okay, that's an extremely good question. On the rules, it actually can be the same party. It can be the same party that runs a DEX. Okay, all right. An IEO operator can also run a DEX, and the DEX can also be an IEO operator. But the rules that came out essentially allows for an IEO operator to be standalone, like in the merchant bank in itself. Okay. In my days when I was in the merchant banking industry, the stock exchange was the guys who were in the securities companies were not merchant bankers; they were separate. All right. Now they're actually all investment banks. Everybody has been put together. So there are you can actually have two. In fact, the three DEX operators can apply for IEO platform license, operator platform license. They can, but they have to comply with a new set of requirements, and that will involve new costs and new management structure. So I'm not sure if they would be keen to do so, but it is possible. Okay.
Okay. Rodney, if I can ask you, so you initially you were saying that when they want to raise funds, the funds must be raised in fiat currency and not in cryptocurrencies, right?
Correct.
It has. Okay. Yeah. So and does it have to be in Malaysian ringgit, or does it? Or
the impression that we have from the rules itself is that the IEO operators need to actually open a bank accounts with licensed financial institutions. And when these words are used in Malaysian legislation, it means Malaysian. All right. Okay. So it will have to be done locally in Malaysia itself. All right. Okay. But the investor, okay, there's no restriction for where the investor can come from. All right. All right. So somebody wants to invest in a Malaysian IEO from Denmark, is free to do so. Right? But the payment must come through in fiat currency. That's all. They are not. They have not gone on to say you can now do it in cryptocurrency, although there is no prohibition in there. So that's where we are at the moment. Okay. Now. Okay. So anybody wants to subscribe for it will actually contact the IEO operator do an IEO will contact the IEO operator, and the IEO operator will then essentially make the submission to SC, and if SC approves it, then only with SC approval, then you will see this entire flow come about. Investor coming in, paying into the IEO operator as trustee, then the money being paid into the business platform in itself. Notice the business platform and the issuer company may well be different. Okay, the issuer company is actually like the management and part owner of the business. You're not actually paying money into the issuer company itself. All right. Although there are some people who say the rules allow you to pay the issuer company directly, but I feel that for investor protection, it is probably better to have that business separated out from the issuer company, because otherwise, if we put money into the issuer company per se, wouldn't it be a dilution of capital? I don't know. At this time, it's too early to say what SC would or would not prefer. But at this point in time, my guess is that it's probably better to have a business platform which is slightly separate from the issuer company for investor protection. Right? This is just my view. Someone may have a different way of structuring the matter. Okay,
Rodney, just another question. So so you said that there were no restrictions on foreigners participating in the IEO. Yeah. What about in terms of are there any restrictions in terms of how many percent they were to participate in?
Again, there doesn't seem to be any restrictions at this point in time. In fact, you hang on to that. I will get on to the investors and who they can actually, whether they can actually, who they can buy and how much they can buy. I have a slide on that, and I think that will answer your question in itself. Okay. Right. So where were we? Okay. I think we can slip by this thing quickly. The IEO operator requirements. If you want to be a IEO operator, that platform itself, you're going to be like an investment banker. You also need 5 million paid up capital, just like the three the digital asset exchanges. Also has to be locally incorporated. You are allowed to operate a DEX if you have you've met with the relevant requirements. Okay, and all, of course, the usual requirements in all listings. Your board members, your chief executives must be fit and proper persons. There must be one person who is primarily responsible for operations, and the person responsible for operations must have at least 5 years experience in carrying out due diligence, assessment of business proposals, fundraising, or other relevant experience. Okay? So it is quite exciting that what these things are. Okay, coming into the class of investors in itself. Okay, they allow 3 classes of investors: of sophisticated investor, all right, which is under the rules, means that somebody is actually earning either in Malaysian ringgit or foreign currency 300,000 and above annually, has assets of more than 10 million, other than the primary home itself. So the definition of sophisticated investor is similar to the other legislative regimes itself. There is, however, an angel investor category of somebody earning at least about 180,000 a year, or having at least 3 million in property assets itself. Okay, those people are restricted to a maximum investment of 500,000 within a 12-month period, not 12-month period, 12-month period. Okay? Angel investors, and they have to be Malaysian tax residents. So Malaysian tax residents on that fall within that interesting category can only invest up to 500,000. Unfortunately, for retail investors, that means anybody else itself, you can only invest a maximum of 2,000 ringgit per issue and a limit of 20,000 per year. That means you can only do up to 10 issues per year itself. I think these limits were put in to protect investors, especially in a new market like this, when the rules are still being worked out between the industry and SC. So as they go on itself, so I think these things are here for a good reason. But for many people who see this, they find that you know, it could be a hindrance to liquidity in the market.
So, Rodney, you know, the difference between a sophisticated investor, I mean, it's a SC rule, right, and also an angel investor. What is the main difference between those two?
Essentially, it's I think, especially if we're talking about individuals, it's income limit. An angel investor must earn at least more than 180,000 gross income per year. A sophisticated investor is earning 300,000 gross income per year. So essentially, it's both the income level and the asset availability. You meet either one of the criteria itself, you will qualify. You know, you either have so that's the difference itself. Angel investor to me, it's like a little subclass they've created for the purposes of this particular rule.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, so essentially what we have right now under SC is that we have different types of platforms available. We have P2P lending. There's no strict limit. It depends on essentially on your credit scoring. The only limit in P2P lending is that investors are only allowed to put in, I think, 50,000 limit per particular loan itself. Equity crowdfunding has recently been given a boost. Their restrictions have been changed, the regulation been changed. They're now allowed to actually raise up to about 10,000 ringgit, and there's no impediment for them even listing some of the shares out there. I saw that as a byline, but I don't know what the details are. Whereas if you were to do an IEO, you can raise anything from 10 million up to 100 million. So you can see that in the I suppose SC is looking at making IEOs a different market for larger investments in larger projects or SME type projects in itself. Okay, so IEOs occupy a different niche compared to the others, as you can see. Okay, P2P is very short term, very high interest rate, but there is no limit in terms of size. ECF itself 10 million and IEOs up to 100 million. So that's where we are in terms of the landscape that we have.
So running for IEOs, if you're an SME wanting to go the IEO route, does that mean that it's minimum 10 million?
Yes, you can raise up to 20, not minimum 10 million, as long as you have 500,000. Okay, 500,000 paid up capital, you can go up to 20 times. When I put that 10 million is, I'm assuming people want to raise 10 million if you're going to do so. But the reason being is that if you are raising less than that, your cost of doing your IEO is going to be fairly prohibitive. Okay, I would say that your cost and your fees and matters like that, unless you're raising a good substantial amount of money, it's quite an expensive exercise. For instance, in the entire IEO process, because it's like an IPO process, you will have your professional advisors, you will have the IEO platform operator acting as the merchant banker. You will need lawyers to conduct due diligence on the matter because it's a requirement. You may need to have expert opinions on certain segments of the economy that you are trying to position yourself with the money itself. You may need technical consultants to give feasibility reports. All these things itself cost money. So IEOs, my impression is they will not be cheap. So you will need to be looking at raising a good sized chunk of money before it's worth your while going to an IEO. To be honest, I think that if you're only trying to raise up to 10 million, on a $500,000 capital itself, you're better off going ECF. It might be actually cheaper than doing an IEO.
Would you be able to give a ballpark, I mean, to some of our viewers, I know it's not been done before, but I guess it's different from a case-to-case basis. But let's just assume we're going the IEO route and you're trying to raise exactly 10 million. What would you estimate the cost to be? What's a ballpark figure we're looking at, or a percentage, you know?
I was speaking to some other fellows during the last SC consultation before our friend COVID-19 came and spoiled the party. The some of the fees that I was quoted for similar exercises in other jurisdictions was almost as high as 12% of the amount that is to be raised. So it is quite an expensive amount in itself. Now, we don't know what the fees are going to be like in Malaysia because no one has done it. And I need to point out, these rules, although they are very available, haven't come into force, okay? They haven't come into force. They were announced in January. They were supposed to come into force the second half of this year. SC was going to announce the start date. But then, as you know, COVID-19 has stuffed everything up, so we don't really know when they're going to come into force yet. So with that caveat, we don't know what the fees are going to be like. But I would imagine you will need to be able, you must be prepared to spend anything between about at least 5 to 10% of the amount raised for as fees or as listing costs.
Okay, noted. So that, I mean, because because equities regulators also, we did a listing exercise last year. Almost puts it side by side with probably the leap market listing, if that's
very much so
size, right?
Yeah, that would be very much so. I would imagine. The hope is that in this particular market itself, the one good thing is that the tokens can be shaped. We can actually change a token and actually put in features into the token which you will not get on a share. I'll give an example. It is technically possible, okay, and if you draft your trust deed right, legally possible to issue a token whereby it carries the feature of a bond, half of it carries on, and the other one equity in itself. Right? You can actually put two types of features in there to make the instrument that you sell off unique and palatable. You could have, as an investor in itself, after 5 years, a repayment of half the amount that you invest, like a bond, and the other half is then invested as further equity or as equity into the project itself. So you can actually mix and create different types of rights in a token. That is the one good thing that it has in its flexibility, the way I see it itself. Because looking at it, everything is tied to how the rights of the tokens are defined in the white paper and in the deed of trust, the trust deed itself. And so that gives us tremendous flexibility. The fact that we are allowed to now tie rates of returns in some form of fractional ownership gives us the ability to innovate. And I think that's where it becomes very exciting.
So Rodney, I think a couple of weeks back, we had one of our guests come on. Alvin, was it Dato Stuart Lebroy, right? So we were talking about REITs. So for example, in an IEO, you could also tokenize. I mean, you could have a company and tokenize some real estate in there, right? And
very much so.
And then you can also program the dividends to be then sent directly to in token form. If, for example, it were an ERC20 token, and that would be still within the rules, right? I mean, it would be
all within the rules. The way why I'm excited about it, and purely as a commercial lawyer, is that there are ways in which you could have a series of token investors who've come along with you. This is just my view. SC may take a totally different view. But if you imagine you are a company, a startup, and you're growing your company itself, your token investors have helped you build this part of the business there. One day you decide to say, okay, my token investors is sit outside my company itself. I want to do a second round of tokens, and I'm going to do a second round of tokens, and my previous token investors are going to be allowed a certain discount on subscribing for those tokens itself. So they can come in and swap their old tokens for new ones, all right, with a smaller markup, okay, for cost for tokens, as a way to reward, as a way to show that I appreciate these token holders coming and journeying along with it. And it's very possible to do so and program that on an ERC20 platform, or even some of the better platforms that we now have, okay, on the blockchain itself, okay. I think you probably know those better than I do. So there lies that incredible possibility that technology, which is getting better and better, does afford a smoother and smoother transition of rights and a packaging of different types of rights into what is a security asset, compared to the traditional securities that we have, all defined by the Companies Act. Okay. So that is quite exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you might be getting a lot of phone calls after this session. Everybody wants to raise $100 million.
Everybody wants to raise $100 million. Unfortunately, the rules haven't come into force. So until the rules come into force, and until there are parties who are willing to take up the IO operator's license, which itself is an arduous process itself, until those things come into play, all right? Okay, don't call me yet. But if you are interested in following this up, or even interested in starting or becoming an IO operator itself, then yes, we have plenty to talk about.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions. I'll just start off with the Facebook one first, because I think today's session is very much more driven by SMEs or CEOs or companies that are looking for funding options. So one question from Stephen here. He's saying the whole idea behind IEOs or STOs, security token offerings, or initial exchange offerings, is to encourage global investors to make it easy to start, invest, and send the funds over, right? So if global investors need to have a Malaysian bank account or fiat currency via the banking network, our traditional primitive banking network, okay, wouldn't it be too restrictive? And doesn't this IEO guideline kind of, he says, is dead before it starts? Yeah.
In other words, he's saying, the IEO guidelines dead on arrival? Okay. Well, Stephen, you have just expressed the sentiment most of us had the second we saw the guidelines on January 15 this year. When we looked at it, we were saying that it seemed very parochial, restricted to the local market because of the need to demonstrate this Malaysian digital value-added proposition for the Malaysian economy. So in itself was a bit of a disappointment, but I am hopeful. We have actually written in and mentioned these things to the SC, and as I say, these rules have not been fully set in stone yet, although they have not actually come into operations. So there's room for discussion still, and I believe that there is a conversation going on, certainly with the fintech industry. Of course, all of us would love to have an active STO or IEO market in Malaysia for the regional or global markets itself, that people use Malaysia as the venue to raise money and to generate this very active market. I think that is still the aspiration, and I think the aim is still there. I won't count it out entirely, because I think the SC can be persuaded to see things that way. They're just being a bit cautious. I believe that the industry will talk to them, and finally, hopefully, they will see the light, so to speak. Okay. We've already come very far from the early exposure draft. We've actually
Yeah.
I think Andrew is aware of that development. From the consultative paper to what it is today, they've moved very far, and so we are very encouraged. We just need them to move further still. That's all.
Rodney, I've got another question from Yun Ping. So the question is, would an entity, why would an entity choose to do an IEO? Would the IEO route be easier than the usual IPO or funding route? Does the IEO route enable easier access to FDIs?
Okay, that's a very good question. Why would an entity want to do an IEO? Well, first and foremost, to do an IPO, you will need to have a business track record forecast. You've got to be an existing business in itself. In IEO, you don't have to. Okay, you can be an existing business, of course, but there is no strict requirement of having any what you call that track record, for instance, right? Or minimum track record for 3 or 5 years, wherever you need to. Okay, so that is one thing. The second thing about having an IEO in itself is that because the tokens can be formulated in whatever ways you wish, you can actually build in certain features into the tokens itself. It allows for more creative funding that you will probably get from, say, if you're dealing with normal IPOs per se, right? And the other thing is that the big thing is that owners of companies do not lose control of their business itself, of the management company. There's no dilution of original ownership equity because these tokens sit outside the traditional capital structure of a company itself, right? The owners are not selling away their equity. No doubt there will be some ownership of the new business that comes out that has to be shared with the IEO or token holders itself, okay? But as far as the management of the company itself, the shareholders and directors all remain in place as before itself. So I suppose the big attractiveness will be having access to money without having to dilute your shareholding.
Sounds like a dream.
It sounds like a dream, but there will be restrictions, I'm quite sure. SC, you want to see that investors are adequately protected, that in the event of insolvency, that they will actually have their interest protected too. It's not just giving free money like an ICO, and then you hope that the company does well, and then your value goes up purely by association. Well, when there's no real gain to it. This is different. This you can actually get a return, So it's actually quite good. Right?
Rodney, I've got a question. So in so FINMA in Switzerland, they've defined types of tokens, right? There are 3 types, right? Whether you're a payment token, or whether it's a security token, or it's a utility token, and it can be made up of a combination of the 3. Is there such a definition in Malaysia?
No, there isn't. That's a great thing about it. The digital asset itself, can be a token, and they say nothing about what type of token it can be or it must be, right? The only caveat is the rule that if it's a token that already is in fact a class of security that already exists, then the issue must comply with the rules of that class of security. That's all it says. Okay, so in other words, you can build whatever. You could have it make it as a payment token, or payment token, utility token, or security token. All over the world, the magic bullet is that we want to actually be able to issue security tokens, because security tokens have what they call fractionalized interest in the business and a rate of return. Every country in the world, every jurisdiction been trying to do something like that. We actually now have the framework to do something like this. Except for the fact our friend COVID-19 came and messed up the party, that's all. Okay, so the framework is potentially there, and I hope it grows.
Okay, so that leads me to a question from TechWin TL. So the question is, would you see digital assets being used as legal tender in the near future?
Okay, whether digital assets will be used as legal tender in the near future. Okay. I'm going to put on my old banking hat, okay? old banking hat. I'm sure some of even our mutual friends will always tell you why cryptocurrencies are better than fiat currencies, and they'll give you a litany of reasons, and they're not wrong in many ways itself. And the fact that cryptocurrencies are seen as a threat by some central banks, like the ill-fated Libra issue, Facebook wanted to issue its own cryptocurrency called Libra, and then the Americans just basically killed it because there weren't any rules. They were very afraid of it because it's like it could substitute and subvent fiat currencies out of that. Okay, but having been a banker, I'll tell you why it may not fully replace fiat currencies, because as much advantage there are in, this is my personal view, as much advantage there are in cryptocurrencies, there are also some downsides. And one of the downsides is this, like it or not, money essentially, there's no real definition of money. Okay, the best definition of money that I've ever heard in my life was the one told to me by my lecturer in corporate finance. He said, money is what money does. Money can be anything. It can be a coin, a cowrie shell. It can be, in the Yap Islands, it's a big stone wheels in itself. Money essentially is just anything that you and I or people agree that is good payment, okay? Good payment in it. That's what money is. Bitcoin essentially fills that definition. There has no inherent value. It's not gold. It's not anything like that. It's just something that you and I accept. Yeah, I'll accept it as payment. Okay. Fiat currencies is one thing. Fiat currencies open themselves to what is called fractional lending. Okay, fractional lending, which we all know. You know, you deposit $10 in the bank takes $10, lends 9 away, and then the 9 out there will be 8, and then go to another bank, and then the bank lends 8 away itself, and that creates money supply. All right, because it can do that. All right, that is what allows for countries to create and put money into the system and build the economy up in itself. Digital currencies cannot, because a digital currency can only exist in one place at one time. In one wallet, you transfer it over there to another wallet, it no longer exists here. Whereas in a fiat currency, because of fractional lending and because the banks are the ones standing behind it, you would say, oh, okay, although your money been loaned out, you will say, I still have $10 in the bank, right? So fractional, and that is one way how our modern economy works in itself. So until cryptocurrencies can substitute that or come up with a better way to deal with the monetary system itself, it's going to be a long time before it replaces fiat currency.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree, right?
Yeah. There's another question from Peter Wee on YouTube. Yep. So he says, for a sophisticated investor, do you need to be certified by the authorities, or do you make a declaration that you are one?
I think it's a declaration. Before you go in, you actually just make a declaration and then you go ahead, because I think having the authorities to certify it will mean that you have to file your tax returns or have your asset list all being given up itself. I don't think that's going to be practical, but who knows, you know? Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rodney, quick question. Some of the slides, is that shareable with some of our viewers?
The slides shareable with viewers. I'll send them to you and you can go ahead and share them.
Okay. So maybe I just make a quick announcement before, just a quick announcement. Let me see if I have this here. For those who are still joining us, what you can do is to actually download some of the materials that we've done. All you do is send us a WhatsApp at 603-8408-2070. I repeat, 603-8408-2070. Send us a WhatsApp there, and you can actually download those PDFs, right? So Rodney has been kind enough to share his slides. So give us maybe an hour after the show. You can send us a WhatsApp, and you can actually download some of this. You can also use this avenue to download any of our copy time sessions or research that we've done. It's all done through the WhatsApp. Yeah. So Andrew, continue the next question.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, before I go on, I just wanted to say, Rodney, thank you so much for actually coming onto our.
Thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be here to be able to share.
Just an hour.
As Alvin says, you're one of the rare breeds. You're a lawyer who is very progressive and you understand crypto and you're up to date with the regulation. So very, very rare. And obviously, lawyers charge by the hour, by the minute. So thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Not an issue.
We got one last question here. Look, it's almost an hour, so there's one last question here from Facebook. This is from 𝐷𝑦𝐻𝑜𝐬. He says, look, since SC has set up rules and regulations, do you see that banks in Malaysia in the near future will announce their own crypto in order to take a piece of this market? And if yes, what will be your outlook in finance or the economy in Malaysia?
That is a highly interesting question. Let me dial back a bit. I think in early, I could be wrong. Andrew, help me out. China promulgated a set of laws that allowed its central bank to issue cryptocurrencies. Okay, so the Chinese Parliament passed a set of laws allowed to do so. Now, the world is still waiting on the Chinese central bank whether they're going to be issuing these cryptocurrencies in itself. But the long-held suspicion the suspicion and speculation is that if they do, it will be it's one of those, what we call them, tethered currencies. It will be tethered to the renminbi itself. Okay, it will be tethered to an existing currency so that its fiat and cryptocurrency will have equivalent value going out there. That is one of the speculation there, that they are prepared to embrace this new realm of technology and this realm of transferring assets and business there. So it remains to be seen whether banks will be prepared to jump in and issue their own cryptocurrencies. But you see, as the main problem lies in this, that unless you are able to create a cryptocurrency format that is able to accommodate the use of monetary policy that we have right now, in other words, not stifle the levers of monetary policy like interest rates, statutory reserve ratios, overnight money market rates itself, all these things must build into it. So unless that one works itself, then I'm sure that it will be very slow adoption. So the technology is very attractive. It makes sense to go that way, but we need to solve some problems as we go along. So I think the process is already begun, and let's see what happens. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I think I think they're called CBDCs, right? So central bank digital currencies, and I think the Chinese one is called DCEP, digital currency electronic payment. And I think they're trialing it in 3 Chinese cities, right? They'll be in 3 Chinese cities. And obviously, there's also a rumor going around that's being forwarded too many times on WhatsApp. Is that was China's way to deal with the US dollar being the reserve currency of the world. But obviously that one has been debunked, that it's fake news, right?
No,
it's not
fake news.
But it is really interesting because right now the Federal Reserve in America has actually gone to unlimited QE, right? Because they're actually trying to prop up the economy and because of our friend COVID, and in a submission to the Senate, I think there was a talk about digital wallets, because that actually allows the Fed to deposit the money directly to the citizens. As compared to going through the banking system.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. In a way, we have also had that in our touch and go wallets when the government recently deposited money and gave money to the citizens via touch and go wallets itself. So over here, So we are seeing governments experimenting with that. I think that's a good sign. That should be a welcome development.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Alvin, do we want to do our famous last question for our guests?
Yeah.
There is a famous last question. Okay, I better sit tight.
What keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake at night?
With regards to this topic, obviously, right?
What with regards to this topic? Our friend COVID, the guy really came and spoiled the party. Okay. Perhaps I'll put it this way, what would be my hope for this particular market itself? If you think about where we are now economically, we are in possibly the first large-scale economic slump caused by an absence of demand because people just disappeared off the economy because they stayed home, they didn't spend money itself, and the deleterious effects are now being felt through all over the world in itself. I hope that we will get through this. It will take time, but we will get through this. But there will become a time that we will need to rebuild businesses and economies. Okay, our business and economies. And it is my hope that this form of financing, to be able to raise money using doing IEOs and I think it has to be as an alternative to doing IPOs per se. Putting out far more innovative financial investment instruments to the public. I hope that will be one of the ways we help rebuild and refire new businesses, give old businesses some more capital to rebuild the economy. That would be my hope. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Everyone, thank you. And don't forget, send us a WhatsApp 0384082070 if you guys want to have access to Rodney's slides. Otherwise, thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll be back. Benny will be back with a future session. More importantly, on Saturday night we have something very interesting. We have a special guest who's an author on personal finance. The question is to take the 6-month moratorium or not, right? From a personal finance perspective, Saturday night, right? So stay tuned Saturday night, or you have friends who are thinking about moratorium, take or don't take, right? Tune in on Saturday, 8 o'clock again. We'll all be back, and as usual, we have good conversations at coffee time, right? Thank you again, Rodney, for joining us. Very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Good night. Good evening.
Bye.